Yes, yes, yes. We are indeed actually here. I know those of you who saw the last podcast episode might have joked that, like, oh, here they are again. They're gonna disappear for another 6 months. Yeah, don't worry. Don't worry. At the same time, though, this is something we're recording the next day. We, if you saw before, if you got to the end, know that we didn't actually finish all of our topics. But this will be a lot shorter than yesterday. Me and Danelle had a lot to talk about when it came to Tsundere's.
Oh yeah, you bet we
Apologizing
did.
now. Uh,
Yeah, a
so
lot of
if
hate
anyone's
spread.
expecting that to be the norm, it won't be. We just had a lot built up. Anyways, so this week's episode, for those of you who are now tuning in, sorry about that just now. Um, we're going to be talking about the big three. A bit of context for those who don't know what that is, because you might have been new into anime back in the early 2000s, around like 2007, 2008 ish. If you were an anime fan, you knew about the big three. The big three were One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach. And for those of you who know anything about those shows, One Piece is the only one that's still airing right now and being published in Weekly Shonen Jump. Now, the reason for why they're called the big three is actually not something you'll find a lot of people can agree on, whether it's because they were the most popular, whether it's because they were airing at the same time. And even some that would say, well, they were the three biggest shows on top of the Shonen Jump magazine covers. All of those are technically correct, but they're not the real reason why it's called the big three. If you actually do the research, which is extremely hard to find, thanks to Totally Not Mark, we know the actual reason was popularity polls, actually. But even then, that answer still doesn't equate for why the general public outside of Japan call it the big three. That's something I want to talk to Danelle about personally, and we can just kind of go back and forth on our own reasons. But to at least give you the real information, the big three, as we know them, were only actually the big three to like all at once back in 2009. And that seems insane given how long they've been called the big three, even before 2009. If you actually go back to 2008, 2007, only really Naruto was in the big three at the time of Shonen Jump popularity polls that are normally given out a bunch of those times during the years that people just pick their three favorite shows. One Piece was usually still in like the top four, usually. Bleach was the odd one out that usually cycles in back and forth, but Naruto was the consistent one. Anyways, so we're gonna start to go into our own opinions on the big three and when we first discovered even the term, let alone why we consider them the big three. All right, Danelle, you can go now.
Okay. So the big three, Naruto, One Piece, Bleach. Um, so I didn't even know the whole big three thing was, when I was watching anime back then, I watched all three of them, but I didn't know that there was, some sort of hierarchy. But pretty much I think that the big three are supposed to be like staples for Shonen Jump, right? Between like the early 2000s, and pretty much most shonen, like prior, or sorry, not prior, that came later to that, were derivative from the big three, or at least from an example of the big three. But when I was younger, I used to think that the big three would be like Dragon Ball, One Piece, like probably Hunter x Hunter more than anything, but they weren't. And it's because that whole term didn't start until like the later 2000s, when pretty much those had already come to their end at that point. Yeah, Hunter x Hunter had like its remake, and stuff like that, but it didn't finish, right? So I don't think it count. That's why I didn't really hold that. But do you think that we should have multiple big threes, or are you in the same mindset as me, where I think that, okay, the big three exists because it was a moment in time where this was essentially the best of Shonen Jump, or at least the top three of Shonen Jump, and that it should stay that way. Because now everybody comes up with new big three, saying, "Oh, this is the new big three. This is the newer big three," and I'm just like, okay, like if we have big threes like every year, is it really the big three? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like everyone's like, oh, we should do Jujutsu Kaisen, we should do My Hero, we should do what's the other one? Demon
Demon
Slayer.
Slayer. Demon Slayer was
Yeah,
one, yeah.
and that they should be the new big three. But in my opinion, I don't really think that's how it should work because it's like having like the Hall of Fame for something, right? If you just replace it,
Yeah.
then what's the point of having it? It's there for the memory, it's there because, for its time, it was supposed to be, I don't want to call it revolutionary, but you know what I mean. Like they're a legend within the genre, and that's the reason why they have the place that they have. Jujutsu Kaisen and Demon Slayer and My Hero, like they're doing bits right now, especially. But I don't think I don't think we should be overshadowing the old boys. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And here's the thing, right? One Piece is gonna come to its end soon, so that already pulls
You
like
say
a
soon. My grandkids gonna be watching One Piece
yeah,
when the crew's on the moon and whatnot. Okay,
yeah.
like they're
But
jumping on Neptune and they're going out to the freaking sea.
yeah, I just mean in the sense of like One Piece being the odd one out of the big three that's still continuing does put a wrench in most people's concept of what a new big three is. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where I want to go into a bit why for the longest time I viewed the big three as the big three and why nothing else could come afterwards. It was technically something that had merit behind it, but not real merit. And it was the fact that each of the big three specifically had Toriyama's involvement in some way, not in their creation, but in the fact that they could start at all. Oda used to be an assistant of Toriyama. Kubo literally got Bleach made because Toriyama recommended him, and Kishimoto, I think when they needed to come up with a new idea for Shonen Jump, literally said that like, oh, what about this guy? And then that's how Kishimoto ended up getting Naruto approved. And so a lot of the newer manga don't really have that to them. And while that's not really something where you should really say, oh, but that's just like, a flash in
That's
the pot.
I was about to say that's semantics.
Right. But at the same time, to me, I'm like, I think that through line, that actual thing that connects each of them, helped a lot in making them the big three to me, especially given the fact they all were in publication around the same time. Like all of them started around like 2000, 2001. And it's again, that's a semantic thing for me personally. I know I'm not going to expect other people to view it the same way, but at the same time, like Danelle said with the whole Hall of Fame, to me, the biggest point of contention of the big three is that I think people get too hung up on the name. They want to keep the name and go, this is the new big three. And I'm like, can't you call it something else? I think when My Hero was airing and Jujutsu Kaisen was airing. I think that was probably the best moment in for me to say that the big three can't be called the big three. What you probably should have done was call it the big two because One Piece airing basically eclipses most shows in general. So that's gonna nerf anything coming out to where if you say, "Oh, this is the new big three," someone's gonna be like, "Well, One Piece is still like here at the same time. Like whatever's in slots 2 and 3, those are the actual like next generation. You don't count
Mm-hmm.
four."
And see, that's another thing to me, right? Like, if we're talking popularity,
Mhm.
right? If we're using some of the newer stuff as an example, like JJK, I think might push the envelope more than the rest for popularity, especially right now with season two being a thing. But even if you look at JJK's popularity, let's be honest, I don't think they're going to touch the big three, because like if you use Naruto as an example, Naruto's a legitimate gateway for like most of the new generation of anime watchers,
Mhm.
right? And I say the new generation because like Darian knows what I mean when I say this because
Yeah.
like long story short, within the past few years, we've had basically an eruption within the anime community for for the amount of fans coming out of the woodwork.
Hmm.
I don't know if this goes in hand with like Netflix now streaming anime and all these other like mainstream platforms that have anime now, but now I can't go a regular day without hearing people talk about anime. But when I was younger, that was near impossible. it
Yep.
was it was all confined spaces, man. Like I don't want to bring it up again where it was like, if you watched anime, you were a nerd or you were this, you were that, or whatever. But like that was true. It still remains true a little bit, but it's not looked at the same way.
Hmm.
Now, instead of it being like, oh my God, you're a nerd, you're watching this, everyone looks at it, oh, like, oh yeah, you're kind of nerdy. That's cool. Like there's not a stigma as much around it as there was
Yeah.
before. But Naruto is a gateway for a lot of people for that because I couldn't go a regular day without hearing someone talk about it in some capacity. I have guys at work, and I work in like I'm not gonna say specifics, but like like trucking and stuff like that. And these are all people that have never watched anime a day in their life, besides like Dragon Ball, because everyone has seen at least some Dragon Ball or like Pokemon or whatever, right? They're coming back telling me about how, yo, I just watched the first season of Naruto. That thing was crazy. Like, I'm about to start watching more. And then next thing you know, it leads them into watching other things like Hunter x Hunter, Death Note, blah, blah, blah. It's a gateway. I don't think JJK has done that.
Yeah.
I think
I mean,
JJK has been huge within the community where if you were an anime watcher, even if you weren't necessarily like a shonen fan, you watched JJK and you went, yo, that thing was going crazy, right? And then you have everybody like, oh my God, I love Itadori. I love Gojo. Like, they like the characters, they like the action, they like how good it looks, all this stuff, right? But I still don't think it pushes the envelope like Naruto does. I don't think it pushes it like One Piece does, right? That like Bleach is the only one I can say where Bleach is weird in the sense of um its legacy was it had a rocky point, right? When it first came out, Bleach didn't actually do that well, to my understanding, when it first released.
yeah.
But the moment they started picking up, like
Soul Society.
the Serete arc, then it exploded, right?
Hmm.
Like everyone started watching that, and then from there it went crazy. People were watching it like no tomorrow. It was one of the highest viewed shonen. Okay, whatever, right? But then it dropped off because of where it ended in the series, and now it's picking back up with the with the Thousand Year Blood War
Blood
arc.
War. Yeah.
Now it's picking back up, and it's got some steam again. Like it did freaking pretty crazy in the first release of the Thousand Blood War arc, but it's coming back again. But it's the only one I could say that had a point in time where it was kind of rocky there, but it managed to do like a full return. It pulled all of the old fans back with Thousand War Blood War. God, there's got to be some freaking abbreviation for that. It's
Uh,
getting annoying.
just
I'll
call
just
it
say,
Blood War.
I'll just say Blood War. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it brought a whole like pretty much all the old fans back for Blood War, and the amount of new watchers I saw that watched Bleach to the entirety just so they could be up to date to Blood War is crazy.
Hmm.
Because they saw what Blood War was going to look like, they listened to the music, they saw the animations, and they were like, "No, I gotta watch this." And if you've watched Bleach, like the animations, the character designs, and the music are literally peak in Bleach. You can't
Yeah.
say they're not. Ichigo's the only character in a shonen anime to have drip the way he does. Okay?
Yeah.
This man comes in every time with a new power and just manages to look amazing. So I'm gonna end my fawn there for a minute, but you get my point. The other series that basically came afterwards, they did really well. They're all super enjoyed. People love them, but they don't have that that lasting effect. I don't know if it's something that comes with age or whatever it is, but they don't have the pull that the original big three have. It's like the big three are essentially giants, like looking down on everything that came after them. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
they're at the pinnacle of their craft. And I'm not saying that they're the most amazing. They're not. I think the key word here is that they're the most iconic.
yeah,
I think that's probably it. While JJK, Demon Slayer, and My Hero have really done well, they don't have the same lasting effect that the other three have had. But who knows, man? Like they're going pretty crazy right now. But I just don't think that we should be replacing it because I feel like once you start doing that, it defeats the purpose of having that title.
yeah,
If you want to make a new title for those two doing as well, those three doing as well as they did,
yeah,
go for it, right? It is what it is. But you essentially don't want to shit on your past to make space for the present. You can have both and have it be a thing. When someone has a Hall of Fame for like say like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, right? The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has everybody added to it, and then they stay there. Their place is not removed because someone in their genre came and did it, better in their opinion or whatever.
you're
They
never gonna have
exist.
a new king of pop. It's always gonna be Michael Jackson.
That's what I'm saying,
Yeah,
right? So it's like they exist because they were the stairway for everyone else to walk upon to get where they got. The same way Dragon Ball was that for a lot of other series,
hmm,
right? Most of shonen derived from Dragon Ball in some way. They pulled, what do you call it? They pulled ideas, they pulled, like certain traits and whatever else
oh yeah,
from Dragon Ball. And that doesn't mean that it should lose its place where it's at because the newer thing did it better. Everybody knows, okay, yeah, we get it. In Dragon Ball, it takes 5 episodes of someone, powering up or whatever. Like, we get it, right? Obviously, they didn't do that the best, but that's what they did in the time because that's what they thought was working. It built up hype, it built up whatever, or maybe they just needed to stretch it. Who knows, right? But yeah, obviously the shonen that came after, they don't really tend to do that anymore because they didn't want to copy that aspect of it. But
yeah, yeah,
everything else, they're perfectly fine copying, right? Because it doesn't change the fact that they did it first. Therefore, you have to pay them that creative liberty. Like they did it first. You pay homage to them, and they stay where they're at. You keep going where you're going,
yeah.
right?
And mind you too, like Dragon Ball was not the first for every shonen trope. It clearly copied from some places as well. Like I do remember if you actually look into the history of Dragon Ball, a lot of its references, I shouldn't say references, but some things that it references that it pulls from, like tournament arcs were a big thing around the time Dragon Ball's first tournament arc happened, and so his editor told him to put in a tournament arc. Little did Toriyama know that would become a mainstay in his series going forward. But they only took that because it was a trend that they noticed. But now Dragon Ball, anything that comes after it, they're referencing Dragon Ball when they do tournament arcs. And
Mm-hmm.
that tells you that it's like iconicism bleeds beyond who came first. It's simply who did it and everyone followed.
Yep. Everyone takes creative liberties, all right? Like if something's trending, there's going to be 1,000 people doing the same trend because
Yep.
it's what people like at the time. It's what people wanted to see at the time. But the difference is whoever can take the trend and turn it into the norm where it's not a trend anymore.
Yep.
That's the actual deciding factor, right? Dragon Ball did it and no one blinked twice. No one said anything otherwise. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like they did it and they were like, "Oh damn, tournament arc? All right, it's not a trend anymore. It's just happening." So
Yep.
now every other shonen is gonna have a tournament arc. That's just it has to, right? Um I'm trying to think who did the tournament arc first.
Uh I don't
I can't
remember.
even think.
The problem is I think I might know, but I don't want this to be on record because it'll make me look dumb. I'm still gonna say it anyways. Uh Fist of the North Star. I think that was the one that came out before Dragon Ball that they essentially said, "Hey, listen, action series are in. Copy this." I think it might have been Hajime no Ippo though, that because that's technically it's not a tournament arc, it's a sports show, but it might as well
Hmm.
be a tournament arc all the time. Is I'm pretty sure the reason why his editor told him, "Yeah, no, these things are in. Find an excuse to put it in," and he went, "All right, World Martial Arts Tournament does it. Oh crap, everyone loves it." Like that's when Dragon Ball actually picked up in terms of sales. Like Dragon Ball was already its initial premise was popular enough to get eyes on it. Plus, it was written by Toriyama, who already made Doctor Slump. But the tournament arc is literally the moment that like its sales started to go like up, and then it
Hmm.
only picked up as time went on. And in general, if you look at Shonen Jump's actual records of like how many people are purchasing Shonen Jump yearly, the amount of people buying it went up year by year until the series ended after the Buu arc, and then it just plummeted because
Yeah.
everyone that was buying Shonen Jump were buying it for Dragon Ball. And that's not to say there's nothing good in Shonen Jump, but you can't ignore the data that's similar to if you look at Dragon Ball's popularity going forward. Dragon Ball just kind of escaped velocity to anime in general. It's just
Hmm.
it was that thing that it didn't matter who you were, you knew Dragon Ball. And that's like where I'm saying that like the whole trend thing, and part of the reason why I don't consider Dragon Ball part of the big three is Dragon Ball is its own category. It's literally its own category. At this point, it is the grandfather of shonen without being the person that created the genre. The same
Hmm.
way Gundam is the grandfather of mecha, despite the fact that technically Astro Boy came before it and would have counted.
Hmm.
But yeah, no, it's definitely interesting. I don't think the term needs to stay in the fact that like people need to constantly make up a new big three. I would personally go against it. It's the same way I view comics. Comics have a golden age, silver age, bronze age. People always want to consider the age that they're in to be the golden age because they're enjoying themselves. And it's like, no, the golden age is usually decided by multiple factors. And it's also something that is there and it's gone. It's
Hmm.
gone. Anything that comes afterwards, we're in, I think we're in the Iron Age now, or the New Age, whatever it's called. Regardless, these ages happen. They're supposed to happen. That's just time in general. And I think people in general are too focused on the fact that I exist in the moment, therefore, whatever term I think this is what it is. And it's like, no, history's come and gone. It just the big three happened, it's gone.
Hmm.
It's gone. And that's fine. You don't need to be the big three. You can be the Trizon stars. Whatever, right? Making up names. But
You
like
can
I
make
think
up
people
whatever you want to call it. You can do it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and people don't want to do that because they want to keep the legacy behind the name. And it's a problem outside of anime fans. It's just a problem with humans in general. Where like if you look at entertainment, so many things are remakes or like, hey, look, it's the sequel to that show you like, and then you look at it, and if you watch the original, you're like, this is nothing like what I like. Our dad is a great example of that. He hates Marvel movies. That might be blasphemous to a lot of you, but to him, they don't copy the comics because it's something I've learned from the way adaptation works. And one show I really like nowadays, Oshinoko, even delves into this in its second season, is that most people, when they want adaptations, don't understand what it means to translate something from film to, sorry, from comic book to film, from manga to TV. And sure, I think a lot of people have at least real credence to go, nah, a lot of them are just garbage. But at the same time, too, when you're a creative, you don't want to just make the same thing again. It's even worse if you actually have pride in what you do, because having a cheat sheet that tells you what you're supposed to do feels insulting. I believe fans when they're worried that the One Piece live action could turn out like Dragon Ball Evolution. They were right to fear that. But at the
Hmm.
same time, I like to look into what actually makes the production a production. Do they have respect for the material? Are they constantly talking back and forth with the creator to get proper permission to do things? Because I find here in the West we don't do it as much as in the East, which is why in the East a lot of things we consider shit are usually more so an issue of adaptations not looking the best rather than the storyline being garbage. I think there's very few times where an adaptation is bad and the story is shit, like X Arm. But at the same time,
Ah.
listen, that thing killed its manga.
Oh
Okay,
my
that adaptation
god.
was actually bad. It was nuclear bad. But
I watched X Arm just so my eyes would hurt because I was like, oh man, I was like, this CG anime, huh? All right, let's sit through this. And I'm like, yeah, I can't do it. I tried, man. I tried. I was like, yo, listen, I had a good time with Ajin, and that was enjoyable, even though the CG was kind of poo.
yeah,
But I was like, oh, that's enjoyable. Let's give this one a shot too. I even tried another one. What was it called? There's
Beastars,
another CG anime. Ah, no, I watch Beastars. Beastars is
Land of the
fine.
Lustrous.
No, it started with an S. I can't remember now.
Well,
It's
then I
gonna
was
bother
looking
me,
that
but
up. Yeah,
it's
anyone that
okay. I'm not
watches,
gonna find it now because it completely slipped my mind. But
yeah,
long story short, yeah, I watched a couple. I thought they were pretty enjoyable, so I was like, okay, let's give this one the benefit of their doubt. You know, let's watch a little X Arm. All right, I didn't know that it was gonna look like a PS2 game cutscene, but the whole time I'm just like, bro, what happened?
yeah.
So yeah, no, that was pretty depressing on their front, but
And
yeah,
I
no,
feel bad, honestly. Like that show's production beyond being a mess. The fact that it got its manga publication canceled,
yeah.
that's terrible.
See, because the whole premise of X-Arm is actually pretty cool. It actually is. Like if you look at it, like if you read like the manga or whatever, like you don't even have to read the manga. But the problem is if you watch the anime, you'll hate it. But
Yeah, just read the manga.
the like I don't know how to explain it, but long story short, like it's got like this really cool like sci-fi, like I don't want to call it fantasy vibe going, but it works out really cool if only the anime didn't make it look like a PlayStation cutscene where the main character's facial expressions either A don't change at all, or B, when they change, it's jarring.
Oh yeah,
Okay? Like he'll go from being completely monotone in the face to like this like super exacerbated um like facial expression that looks like scary, and it'll hold it there for a while for no apparent reason. I'm just like, yo, this whole thing wasn't thought through. And then the fact is that they have a weird mix between 2D and 3D animation.
yeah,
You'll have main character standing on a building and the whole background is 2D drawn, but he's the only 3D thing. And then next thing you know, main character sitting there looking funny with the CG, with the facial expression not being like they forgot the file or something. They just whatever, right? Threw his face on there. And then they have another character standing right beside them that
yeah,
is drawn and drawn properly.
yep,
So I'm like, what was the point of the CG if you're gonna do it this weird? I don't get, like, pick one. If they just drew it, it probably would have been fine. Most
yep,
likely it would have been fine. But if they just went all in on the CG, like go to even like levels of Ajin, it would have been fine. But the
yeah.
problem is they had this really weird mixed bag where it was like always in the middle. Like it was never good in one sitting. I'm just like, what the hell is going on here, man?
Yeah, no, it was X-Arm, not to stay on X-Arm too long, but at the same time too, it's just it was one of those things where you could tell the studio had to be new because there's no way you would see Bones make a mistake like that.
Mm-hmm.
Ever. You wouldn't see it.
Mm-hmm.
And like a lot of people don't understand, Ufotable uses 3D a lot. So the actual issue is not 3D. It's literally just the type of skill going behind it. That's all
Mm-hmm.
it is.
Ufotable has an unprecedented skill of using CGI the way it should be used.
Mm,
Right? They do 2D animation for the most part, but they mix 3D elements, especially if you pay attention to Demon Slayer's backgrounds
yep.
sometimes. Um, yeah, they use 3D elements and CGI implemented tools to make things look more dynamic that you couldn't get by drawing it, or at least you could get it, but you know you would be drawing it frame by frame and it'd be a pain in the ass. But long story short, they use the tools given to them and they do a really good job using it. The problem is now that a lot of companies that are trying to use CGI, um, they're using it as a cop out, where they're like, yeah, okay, we'll generate the 3D models and then we'll just animate them, but they don't realize how much time and effort it takes to use CGI and make it look fluid,
Yup.
right? Or even general. Like, this is the reason why you know how much time game developers spend just on CGI cutscenes. When
Yo,
you see
God, yeah.
those cutscenes in video games and they look super good, those are 30-second cutscenes and they look really good, but that takes them an obscene amount of time and effort to do. So when I see these anime studios try to do an entire series in CG, my default is like, yo, this is going to look bad because
Yeah.
they don't have the budget or time
Especially not
to,
time.
yeah, to generate something that is going to look to even close the quality that I'm talking about and make this a 12, 13, whatever plus anime. There's
Mhm.
no way. They have to cut corners. That's why I'm like, if that's the case, why do it? Right? If you're going to use CG, use it the way it's supposed to be used. Make it look better. The whole point of CG is you get the benefit of, like, higher frames,
Mhm.
right? So instead of, like, anime being usually like, I think 24
Yeah.
frames, like it's like the cinematic stuff. Yeah, with CG, you can go 30, you can go 60, you can go whatever the heck you want to go. So during scenes, with high amounts of movements and action, you can literally go crazy with CG. That's
Yeah.
why if you watch like Chinese anime, they're all CG. Those things look amazing, right? Because that's their bread and butter. Their action scenes in Chinese anime are so dynamic. I literally get tonal whiplash trying to watch them a lot of the time because there's so much going on. Regular anime could not replicate that. It can't, because
Yeah.
there's too much. It would take way too much out of the artist to draw all of that in. It would take them literally weeks to do like the like half of a fight segment. You know what I mean?
If anyone's seen Zenless Zone Zero, that is not CG, that is in-game graphics, but at the same time, it's essentially like Danelle was just talking about when it came to CG. Part of the reason why I can't watch a lot of Chinese anime, like the language aside, the actual speed at which most things are happening, I just can't keep up with.
Bro,
I
it's like
find
120%. I swear
yeah,
to you.
I find Zenless Zone Zero from MiHoYo's like newest game, a lot of their cutscenes are 2D drawn, but like they look as fluid to me as most CG stuff is. And I find that is a skill that they just have at this point. And God, I wish they could just make an anime. Like
Mm-hmm.
genuinely, I want that studio specifically to make one. It's so fluffy and yet at the same time so weighty in a lot of its movements that it
Zenless
just
Zone
feels so
Zero, is
good.
that MiHoYo?
Yeah, it's the
Okay,
newest
well
one.
that's why. Listen, every game that MiHoYo makes, I'm like, yo, just make an anime, man. Because I've been playing like Honkai Impact Third for I don't know how long, since the game released, like, I don't know, over 10 years ago at this point.
Mhm.
And they have got some of the craziest cutscenes where I'm just like, man, just make an anime. If they just made an anime, it would go crazy. And MiHoYo, they have the money, and not even just the money, but they have the knowledge, because one of the things with MiHoYo is, you know, forget some of the shit they catch for whatever mundane thing the internet feels like picking on them for at the time.
Yeah.
Um, they genuinely look for for player involvement. They're constantly sending out surveys asking you for your opinion on different things, right? Like Honkai Impact Third essentially was the starting point for Genshin, because in Honkai, they would basically give you surveys and they would ask you these questions like, how would you feel about a new game that was like more open world or had, different characters like this and whatever else. They would ask you these questions over and over again until they had a definitive answer from the community. And then once they had that answer, they would do the go ahead and go for it. And then next thing you know, Genshin came out the woodwork, right? That's how it comes along with MiHoYo. if we told them, Mahoyo, hey, we've noticed your cutscenes looking real good. You should make an anime. I'm telling you right now, if they made one, it would be good. The fact that the choices they make for voice actors, the choices they make for music already are like high quality.
Yeah.
I would be so happy if they had an anime because I feel like they would do it really well.
To link into our topic earlier about the big three, I just to just to link it to a bit, I find it funny and incredibly fascinating. We only have that type of talk of big three when it comes to anime. I don't think I've ever heard something like that when it comes to movies or video games. Everyone has favorite video games. That's fine. But I think there's just something about favorite video games and favorite movies that people understand is subjective, and therefore you can't make a title, so to speak. Like, no one goes, oh, the three shows everybody has to watch, the three video games everybody has to play. They're so different and varied that people just naturally go, yeah, no, just not these. But because the big three is a title given specifically to shonen, I think that isolation makes it easier for people to go, yeah, no, let's make a new big three rather than, oh, what's the big three of anime? We even made our seven pillars of anime in one of our earlier podcasts. And as much as we can agree on that, I know there's probably someone out there that disagrees with at least one of those choices, even if
Mm-hmm.
everyone knows unanimously Dragon Ball is a pillar. But like, yeah, no, when it comes to games, especially like when I think about like a lot of Chinese games and Korean games are starting to like bleed into the market, it's it's very interesting to me to see a lot of like what people are gravitating towards, because I think kind of like Dragon Ball, some games just escape velocity out of their genre. Like if you look at MiHoYo's Genshin Impact, I know a lot of people that aren't anime fans that play that game.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even like you need to be an anime fan, but like the art style normally dissuades people from most anime games, and yet that didn't happen with Genshin. And when I think about a lot of like other games, even something like say Blue Archive, Nikkei, stuff like that are like Korean made. And even though Blue Archive is technically a Japanese game, but it's made by Koreans because it's outsourced, it's also one of those games where I'm like, I know a lot of people play these things that if you told them, hey, you should play this other gotcha game, they'd be like, what? Never. And
Yeah.
they're not even flinching. They're just like, no, I'm playing this one because it's different. How's it different? And they can't actually explain why. Some can, but not always. And it's just like there's something about it that's pulling them in. Where I find when the big three happened with anime, even though they were called the big three, you didn't necessarily need to be a fan of them to call them that. I think most people that were, say, even fans of Death Note, Code Geass, Haruhi, a bunch of other shows that came out around the same time, they would still call them the big three, but that didn't mean that they watched them. So I think it says a lot about something where people can unanimously agree on what it is, even if they're not someone it's for. Like they're like most shonen shows, when we're talking about Naruto, some people would watch that and then bleed out into other things. But like if you watch Jujutsu Kaisen, I know tons and tons of JJK fans that don't give a shit about other genres of anime. They only watch shonen, which leads to a lot of annoying people on Twitter, but not to delve into that too much. It's just like we grew up watching Dragon Ball. That didn't stop us from watching stuff like Sailor Moon. We grew up with stuff like Naruto. We still watched Black Lagoon. There's just things where even though these are very clearly meant for boys and they're meant for young boys, that didn't stop us from looking at stuff made for adults and girls.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't stop us. We watched Haruhi, we watched Tokyo Mew Mew, we watched Ajin. Well, sorry, you watched Ajin in that case. We watched Dragon Drive. We watched so many other kinds of shows that have nothing to do with it. I don't think older me can sit through half of the shows we watched when we were younger. Genuinely. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I know we watched Aquarion Age. I like Aquarion. Aquarion Age is nothing like it. Like, they're literally not the same despite having that same word. I could not sit through it now. I couldn't sit through Blue Seed. I could maybe sit through Gatekeepers. I love,
Gatekeepers I could get through.
yeah.
Aquarion, definitely not.
Yeah, not
I
anymore for you. I
God,
like
that
it.
thing put me to sleep so many times.
Razafon.
Razafon, the opening would play and I'd fall asleep. Like not even the actual show, just the opening would hit and I'd fall asleep. I don't know what the hell it is,
Yeah.
but I think that also with the big three, they are probably the easiest out of shonen to get into because they don't have those like Japanese like niche god damn it words, I'm losing it. You know what I mean? Like things that like if you're a longtime anime fan, you would be accustomed to seeing,
Yep.
but in Japan is normal. Like when you see like say like the lucky the lucky encounter hijinks and stuff like that. I feel like with the big three, they don't really have those. So it's not as jarring for someone to come in and watch it, right? To them it's the closest to like normal anime is going to get. Disregard the action and combat and jokes and whatever else, right? They don't have any of those outliers where if a regular person were watching, they'd be like, oh my god, what the hell was that? Like they wouldn't get it, right?
Yeah.
Like
And like,
I think the most Naruto did was with the fan service like pushing like the nosebleed,
yeah.
but I think
And
that's probably it.
yeah, no, and like Bleach doesn't have a lot of it. At worst, you could say like the moment where Yoruichi turns from cat to human in the bath, and Ichigo's like, "Wait, you were a woman the whole time?" Like, sure, there's definitely things where outside of character design you could call lucky pervert moments, but really they're not. And One Piece has Sanji and a lot of his stuff, but that's more simping than anything.
Oh yeah, it's just
And
straight simping.
it's just one of those things where you kind of look at them and I look at other shit, especially Fairy Tale being the blatant example, where it's like they're not full of the things people accuse anime of having, despite being aimed at the audience that most of those same tropes are also aimed towards. Like,
That was the word, tropes. I could not think of it. Jesus. But yes,
yeah,
continue.
yeah, no, because like you look at like a lot of etchy stars teenagers, right? A lot of shonen stars teenagers. They're essentially targeting the same demographic of people, but where shonen goes full action, etchy obviously goes full perversion. But it's just one of those things where I'm like, the actual target demographic never changed. It's still young boys. So half the time people get icky and feel weird. I'm like, well, you're an adult looking at this. When I was 8, I was watching this and I felt great.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be ashamed of that ever. What matters is, do I still feel that way? And if I do, why? And for me, I'm like, listen, I just kind of turn off my brain and go, listen, this stuff was made for the people at that age. I'm the outsider looking in now. Like, that's
Yeah.
all it is.
I remember because like obviously, I'm a big Charlie fan, right?
Yeah.
So I watch a lot of his stuff and that was one of the things that got to me where he was like, "Oh yeah, I've been watching a lot of anime as of late, and the only thing I find weird is the fact that um it's always starring high schoolers or people that are like borderline high school about to go to college or whatever at the most, but usually it's just like high schoolers, right?"
Mhm.
And he's like, I don't understand it because he's like, if you just changed it to these just being like, young adults, like say they were just like 18-year-olds out and about living life, he's like, it wouldn't change the story, right? Because some of these shows, he said specifically not all of them, but some of them, they could completely ignore the fact that they're in high school and you wouldn't even know that they weren't adults. That's
One
what
of
he
the ones
was
he brought up was
saying.
Tokyo Revengers.
Yes, because he's like, yeah, these are just kids out in the streets riding motorcycles, beating ass. He's like, the fact that they're in school, they don't even go to school most of the time. It wouldn't change anything.
Hmm.
And I'm like, okay, well, in Japan, it's totally different. To ride a motorcycle, you don't have to be an adult to ride a motorcycle, right? Just like, well, in Canada, you can ride a motorcycle at 16, but in most Asian countries, it's way younger than that because that's their primary, form of transportation. But disregard that. You don't even need a bunch of reasoning as to why that mentality doesn't work if you're looking at it from the production side of things. It's quite simple. They're making it that way on purpose because this show is for teenagers. It's for high schoolers. it's for students.
Yep.
That's what it's for. It's for young adults. And the same question gets brought up all the time. That's why I don't necessarily blame Charlie for this, because he's obviously just started talking about how he just started watching anime. Yeah, he's got quite a few under his belt,
Yeah.
but the fact of the matter is he just started getting into it,
And
right?
also he's like
We
30 something. So like that
actually Charlie's
also
only like a couple years older than me. At the
well,
time when he made that, he was only like
in his
28,
20s,
I
yeah.
think.
Yeah.
But yeah, like long story short, it's like listen, like he's only started watching this when he was in his 20s, right? We grew up on it when we were watching anime since we were literal kids, right? So I grew up watching like freaking Detective Conan and a bunch of other shit when I was a kid, and it's not out of the ordinary for me to see it. Oh yeah, these are students, these are this, these are that, because I understand that that's who it's targeted to. That doesn't mean that you can't enjoy it as an adult or whatever it is. You just have to take a step back, right? It's the same way me and you can watch Gravity Falls and be
Yeah.
like, "Yo, Gravity Falls is a really good show." Disregard the fact that it's made for kids slash teenagers, whatever. If you watch Gravity Falls, it's a good show. It's made for younger adults, but some of the actual jokes and stuff in there are swept in for adults. Like you're not going to get that as a kid,
Yeah.
right? But my point is that they go beyond the scope of just being for kids, but at the end of the day, they are made for that demographic. They are made for high school students, right? And he came to ask like, hey, we have other anime where they're not just kids, so I don't understand why they keep doing that. That comes down to a cultural difference that Charlie doesn't understand. In Japan, their work life balance is drastic. Okay. The moment they come out of college, their lives completely change. It goes from going through, like elementary school, middle school, whatever, high school, college, where you have time of your life, you get to enjoy, club activities, going out with friends, doing all these things. You go from that point in your life where you have, all this freedom, to the moment you're done college, you are working your entire life away. That is the norm in Japan. The moment you get out of college, all right, well, time to work that 10-hour a day job, right? Your daily grind all of the time. And then couple that in the fact with you now like most, the population live in a big city. So you combine that with the big city lifestyle where everything is bustling, traffic, lots of people everywhere, while not having those social interactions because Japan is the way it is. It's a big city, there's lots of people, but there's like a big like there's a big stigma with social interaction. There's certain groups and areas where it's a little bit normal for people to interact and get along, but for the most part within the main city, people mind their business. They don't talk to each other unless they're already friends. But because everyone's working their lives away, they don't really hang out as much as they would like to. And that's the norm there. So the reason why they make anime that is primarily, focused on high school, elementary school is because A, they're targeting those age groups, and B, the adults that want to watch it basically get to relive their youth.
Yep.
That's the primary reason, in at least in my opinion. That's what I've always taken out of it since watching anime. When I was young, it was simple. It was that they're kids watching it, and B, the other people watching it are just reliving that same childhood. That's all it is. If you don't want to watch it, you don't watch it. If you're a grown ass man and you go, this is weird, it's just for kids, then don't watch it. It's that simple, right? You take a step back and you go, shit, okay, maybe I'm too old to enjoy this.
The
If the,
concept to me of this happens elsewhere, why can't it happen here, is redundant, because the point of art is that you do whatever, right? And if every movie copied every movie, right? Like using that as an example, people will get bored. In fact, it's not even just being bored, it would single out the best ones immediately. Because now you're like, oh, this thing does this thing worse. All right, throw that in the trash. This thing does this thing better. Okay, throw that in the trash. Like it would just weed out until you get to the this is the only thing worth watching because it does it the best. when everything's different and you go, okay, this one stars adults, and then this one stars teenagers, and then this one stars kids, and then this one stars old people. Now it's like, okay, you got a range of things that everyone can find something to like, which to me is the
Hmm.
real point of anime, where not everything is for everyone, just in general. But beyond everything not being for everyone, if you're willing to go out of your comfort zone and look at something you wouldn't naturally look at, you'll find that, oh, there is still quality here. It's just I can't look past this part.
Hmm.
And that's like the biggest thing that's always annoyed me about people. Again, like you said, like I don't necessarily blame Charlie, but his problem just puts a magnifying glass on the exact thing I've always had issues when it comes to people, is just the fact of like, well, but like this happens, so then why don't they just do it like these people did? And it's like, okay, by
It's
that logic, why does Mashal do what it does instead of just doing the One Punch Man thing? And
yeah.
it's like, well, because they wanted to do a Harry Potter magic school thing. And it's like, but he's stronger than everyone. And it's, why do they keep doing that? And it's like, well, no, I want to tell a story about like you shouldn't judge a book by its cover and everyone has their worth. And it's like, yeah, but I like the way One Punch Man does their thing. Well, then watch One Punch Man.
Yeah, no, it's like, as you said, it pretty much comes down to that. Where, listen, when when people see something in anime and they're like, man, I wish it was just, I wish it was something else. You have to take a step away, because when you watch something and wish for it to be something else, like, it's different to call out a criticism about
Mhm.
it, like if they did something, like, like inherently wrong. That's one thing. But if you're telling the series, oh man, why didn't you just go this route? It's like, yo, listen, like, this is their story to tell, man. Like, if you don't like it, it's simple. Like, the amount of anime that exists on the planet is massive. Like, you can find anything else. It's that simple. If you don't like it, move on. There's difference between giving it criticism where it does something bad. Like when we were talking about X Arm could have been so much better than it was if they literally just fixed their animation issue. I'm
Yes,
not talking about changing the story or direction or anything like that. Just the animation issue.
it's jarring
That's
as
a
hell.
literal problem,
Yep.
right? But things like that, those are genuine criticisms. They're allowed. You can say that as much as you want. But being like, oh, why are they in high school? They don't need to be there. They could be anywhere else. It's like, listen, they're doing this for their own reasons. If you enjoyed it, great. If you didn't, I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. Um, Tokyo Revengers as an example, right? You're saying you could have done it with adults. Yes, you could have done it with adults, right? You could have just made it street gangs fighting each other, but that exists already. It does. Anime already has that. And notice how I can't even think of the name right now. It obviously didn't do it that well. So leave the people who did it better, to the point where now it's living in your head rent free. Leave them be, because at the end of the day, they're going to make what they want to make, and you're going to consume what you want to consume.
What's funny?
If it doesn't fit what you want, you just gotta keep it going. You gotta go find whatever else to watch, and do that. But Tokyo Revengers would not be as interesting as it was if Takamichi wasn't a high school student, because the same you don't have the same dynamic if it was a grown man doing it. You know what I mean?
Well, the
Um,
thing is too, the part of the point of the story, which I feel like is another reason people
Going
don't.
back into the past, which means,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but I'm just like, I think people also ignore the point of like what the story's trying to tell for, but this is weird though, right?
Hmm.
People are looking, why are they teenagers beating each other up when they could be adults? And it's like, well, if you remember in the first episode, he is an adult, his life isn't that great, and gets the power to go back into the past and fix things. So
Hmm.
that already sets up why they're teenagers.
It's
But if you're
literally a
wondering
plot
why
point.
teenagers are beating each other up, in my mind, I'm like, there's tons of justifications that still don't matter, because I know your actual problem has nothing to do with the fact that they're teenagers beating each other up and the fact that it's starring teenagers.
Hmm.
Because teenagers beating each other up, like you said, he's like, they don't go to school. Why does it matter? It's because it's not important to watch them go to school. This isn't Persona. Persona school matters a lot. So whenever they cut back and forth between the dichotomy of their life doing the magic stuff and then their life in school, that's the point. But in Naruto, there's a reason we didn't focus too much on him being in school. It's
Yeah.
because he wanted to be a ninja, so it focused on the part that mattered, him being a ninja.
Yeah, like they actually did go to class, but they don't show them going to school because that's not the part that's important. It's the fact that people are dying, getting stabbed, getting, you know what I mean? Like there's all
Mm-hmm.
this other stuff going on. They're not going to focus on what was my math homework,
Yeah.
right? It's just it doesn't make any sense. I understand the criticism of like, say wanting to see more adults, but if that's the case, branch out. Go watch something like Gangster or Black Lagoon. Gangster
Yeah.
didn't do that well, but Black Lagoon's good. So
Black Lagoon is actually a great example too, because Rock's entire backstory is basically what we were just talking about why people don't understand Japan's infatuation with high school life. Rock's life is literally just the 9 to 5 every day, and just like in Japan regularly, I'm sorry, you are usable and throw outable.
you're just a
Rock
tool.
was literally up to die, and his boss basically told him, "Yeah, I can tell you that we're basically just gonna leave you for dead." And
Yeah.
Rock got so fed up, he's like, "You know, all this, screw it, I'm staying with you guys." Like that's it, because it's like, what's he gonna do? He's
Hmm.
already been given up on his whole time waiting, trying to get promotions and stuff. It's like he realized he was essentially wasting his life. That's not telling other people go out and throw your life away, be a criminal, but it's the fact that he realized he put too much value in following society's rules of go to school, go to college, work until you die. Because
Hmm.
at the end of the day, everyone's doing that. And as soon as everyone's doing that, you are now like disposable because you're just another head on the conveyor belt. Like it's just one of those things where I'm like, people don't realize just how bad it is over there in Japan when it comes to just people's mental state. It's bad.
All right,
Pretty
guys.
wishful thinking.
We ran a tangent there for a bit.
Yeah, and also
We're
Danelle kind of has to leave.
Yeah, we're approaching the hour point, and I have to head out, so we'll just call it here.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not even sure what topic we have lined up for
Oh, I still
next.
have some, but we don't know
There's
what
a
we're gonna
list.
do next.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a list, but we're not sure which one we're gonna do yet. Did we do most depressing moments yet?
No, we still haven't. I
Okay,
still have that list.
so yeah, let's do most depressing moments in anime for the next one. All right, guys. Hopefully you guys stick around. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Peace.